Thank you so much for joining us today. I've got Kyle with me, and we're going to be talking about where talent and the world of data meet and why talent is so important and people are so important. But before we dive into the questions that I've got for you, Kyle, can you give everybody an introduction?
Certainly, yes. So thank you for having me again, Emma. So yeah, my name's Kyle Winterbottom. I'm the founder and CEO of Orbition Group. I've been in the kind of talent and staffing landscape, specifically within data and analytics, for the last 12 years. And I guess Orbition is a boutique talent solutions business that operates exclusively in the world of data and analytics across the UK, Europe, and USA.
Wonderful. Thanks for teaming up with me again. You mentioned it briefly there, but we did a Third Thursday episode a couple of weeks ago talking a lot about these ideas. And to get us started, I teased this idea of why people are so important in our data strategy at the beginning. Can you share a little bit about why you feel so strongly about the idea that people are really the key to success with a data-driven culture?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we've all heard the term people are our biggest asset, right? We hear that from business leaders and organizations all of the time, and I think ultimately the strength of any business, and even more so as that kind of perpetuates into specific teams and capabilities, is directly related to, I guess, the quality of people it has within that business. So I'll often use a sports analogy, right? So ultimately it's up to the coach of a NFL football team to make sure that they've got the best players in the right positions to perform to their maximum potential to get the results that they want, and that's absolutely no different in business. I think one thing that I'm pretty vocal on is that most organizations process to go and acquire and build those teams is probably outdated and ties directly to the fact that most probably don't have a strategy around that. So we talk about data strategy, we talk about digital strategy, yet these businesses very clearly identify people as their biggest asset, but very seldomly do they have a strategy around people and how they're going to bring all of this together to make it work. So yeah.
So going off of that, then, if anybody wants to learn more about kind of the specifics of the data-driven culture, you guys can go watch the Third Thursday episode. But I want to dive into some of how do you then put the right practices in place to attract the right talent to be successful with this strategy. So what should companies be doing to attract the right talent in the market right now?
Yeah, so that's a very big question. So I think there's a couple of facets to this, right? So I think a diversity of skills is really important in this, and I think that's been proven by the perceived failures in the industry around data and the lack of value that organizations are getting out of these initiatives despite spending multi-million dollars, pounds, euros, whatever the currency. So I think the landscape has shifted quite dramatically. If I think about when I first started doing this 12 years ago, it's drastically different to what it is today, but that's even been kind of even more scrutinized, if you will, over the last 12 to 18 months, given the kind of boom type of talent space that we've been in. So I think people's wants, needs, desires have changed. Obviously, the pandemic certainly played a massive part in that, but I think there's kind of almost a direct correlation between what businesses now should be doing and probably what they've been doing in the past that's caused people's needs and desires to change. So just kind of stay with me on this. But I think what's happened in the past has been that data businesses have gone out and built data teams, and they've claimed that they're going to become data driven. And what's tended to happen is that these people then go into these teams, and I guess that they almost feel like they're on a production line of projects. So a project lands on their desk, they do that project, it kind of goes off into the ether, and these people typically have not known whether it's been good, bad, ugly, whether it's used, whether it's not, whether it's useful, whether it's valuable. whatever the case may be. So their work has just not been visible, basically. So I think there's been a big shift from the people perspective, that they're now trying to find environments where that's what they can, where their work is visible, where it is impactful, where it is valued. And I think that's changed the landscape of what needs to happen from an organizational standpoint. So, one of my biggest pet peeves, and probably what I've become infamous for on LinkedIn, is kind of being very critical of job descriptions that are out there, because most of them are a copy paste of something else. They're very generic. They're normally just a shopping list of technological requirements, and there's really no meat on the bones that would, especially in these type of markets where every candidate, and I hate using the word, why I'm putting quotation marks in it, but every individual has effectively got so much choice, because all these organizations are hiring, they're hiring in multiples. There's there's a lack of skilled workers at a certain level where these organizations are trying to hire, yet they put out these job descriptions which they're just not fit for purpose. So I think there needs to be a reframing of this to basically answer the question, why would or should someone work for your organization over one of the other 5-10 options that they may have? And I think that's the thing ultimately that most businesses are missing. So, as I said, it's normally a shopping list of technological requirements. There's no meat on the bones. There's no explaining, is there a data strategy? If so, what is it? How does that tie to the business strategy? What is the business objective? Who's leading the data capability? Do they have any pedigree in the market? What's the team trying to achieve? How does the team look? What would the day-to-day look like? Etc., etc. So I think all of these things, you never find that in an advert or a job description, yet it's that information that kind of candidate community really want to know. So I think they're key things really in terms of what they need to be doing to try and attract the right type of talent. And the other side of that coin, as I mentioned earlier, is about making sure you get a more diverse set of skills, because I think most organizations have been very guilty of going out just trying to build a team of data scientists, for example. And that's, I've got nothing against data scientists. We work with a lot of data scientists, but that skill alone in silo won't provide the results that the business is probably looking for.
You need to have a well-rounded team, and that's some of what we talked about during that Third Thursday episode. And everything you're saying, being in the millennial generation with TikTok and the like, all of the things that you're talking about right now are the things that people will go out onto these platforms and complain about. Like, where is the salary information? Why isn't this communicated earlier in the process? And so people are screaming for these things, and the information is available, but whether or not we're listening to it is a whole different conversation. So I want to tap into something you posted a little bit about a couple of weeks ago on LinkedIn as well. And it's the idea of small things really mattering as you go through a hiring process and an onboarding process with a candidate or an individual. Can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, I use this kind of term quite a lot where I say, you should sweat the small stuff, because I think those tiny details matter, especially in marketplaces like this, as I've already alluded to, where an individual, if they are looking for potentially a new opportunity, they will have a handful of kind of suitors, and they have a decision to make, right? So there's been plenty of examples where really small, minute details, which, often in previous times you'd look at and say, well, it's not really worth even changing. It's not worth the time to think about this stuff. But for example, we had something recently with a kind of the terminology of a contract about, the employer versus employee notice period, and it didn't match up. Now, the whole narrative around this organization was that, we're a smallish type business. It's a family feel. It's family first. It's all this type of stuff. Yet little clauses like that in a contract can be a huge turnoff and almost kind of seem to contradict the narrative that these individuals who are going through a hiring process with this company have been given, basically. And I think, it's even to your point, Emma, there, right? Salary information on an advert, of course, that in the grand scheme of things is quite a small task to do. You know, it doesn't take you long to write a number on a piece of paper, right? Yet, as you say, most businesses don't do that for various reasons. So I think that the small stuff is really important. I think, you know, all of this ties together really kind of uniquely, in a sense of, you know, the businesses need to do more to attract the right type of people. They also need to be looking for different diverse skill sets. All of that plays into make sure you sweat the small stuff, because those things are often the difference between whether, you know, someone chooses your organization or chooses another organization. And then all of that in itself relates back to the fact that most organizations don't have a strategy around talent. You know, it's often very reactive. So they're on their journey to be more data driven or data enabled or whatever kind of word we're using these days, and then they realize, right, there's a gap in our skill set, in our arsenal, we need to go and hire X. And, you know, it can take a while, right? So there's people, you know, that team then is trying to pick up the slack. That drives internal politics around people being overworked potentially, and all of that type of stuff. So I think there just needs to be more attention paid at the top level to the strategy, what that is, timescales, you know, phases of when we bring people into these businesses, and kind of expected timescales around when certain skill sets will be needed, etc. And I think then that flows through to understanding, you know, the audience, who you're trying to attract, what information they want to see and hear, and then all the way through to the kind of minute details of, you know, if there's something that's very much within your control that you can change, a really small detail like how something is worded in a contract, please just take care of that, because that can be the difference between you getting, you know, your next team member or not, as the case may be. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for adding your tips and tricks into the conversation and helping reorient us around this people focus. For anybody that isn't already, make sure you make your way over to follow Kyle on LinkedIn and reach out to either one of us if you've got any questions. But thank you so much for joining me, and have a wonderful day, everyone.
Cheers, Emma.
If you're looking for expert tips on how to get started with your transformation, or looking to hone in on your approach, make sure that you subscribe to our channel to catch our weekly Digital Transformation Talk series, where we interview experts from around the world on how to make it happen.